Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land.
So today I'm really excited to talk about Alterna Comics. So Alterna Comics is, in my mind, a relatively new publisher, although I've heard they've been doing stuff for years. They've been cranking these things out, and look at how much those comics cost. That's right. So all their titles are running about $150 right now. I believe that they have some that cost more than that, but just a little bit more. But in this day and age of, $3.99 tends to be the average price of comics. It's great. It's refreshing. So I discovered them one day at the comic book store. They had a comic which I don't have here. It's called Mother Russia. It's about zombies in the Soviet Union. So I went through my zombie phase when I was about 15, and I went through my Soviet Union phase when I was about 17. So the comic didn't interest me, but the price interested me. Picked it up. It looked pretty good. It was in black and white. But again, I usually skip things that have to do with zombies. But then, as I went down the stand, almost said newsstand, but the stand at the comic book store, I noticed that several of these alternate books were there, and so I began picking them up one by one. I'm going to talk a little bit about all the titles I've got. I like them all, and I'm flabbergasted by that. By this point, I just pick them up because I just assume they're going to be good. And there are some titles in here that I kind of thought that I wouldn't like based on the name, based on the subject matter or something like that. And again, I've ended up liking every single one of these. So now I pretty much buy everything they produce. So this first one, Go West, though, was the one I was most excited about. I thought it would have sort of like, I like Westerns, I did a review of Bury My Heart on Wounded Knee. But I really like Westerns. I thought this would have a more Western vibe, but it's kind of got a, what should we say, like a rough and tumble character who reminds me a lot of Frank Castle or somewhere in that vein. And it's short. This was only the first issue, so I figured I'd start with this one. Not my favorite, but still great. I'm going to follow the story. I think it's going to get a lot better. The first one's sort of like a world building, and we're going to meet some characters. This doppelganger, no, that's not Donald Trump. When I first picked it up, I thought it was going to be really political, and that was Donald Trump, but it's not. That's actually kind of an IT guy, and he's the main character in it. So I only have issue 2 of this. I'm actively seeking out issue 1, and I believe issue 3 is going to be published soon. But it's about an IT guy, and something happens, and there ends up being a doppelganger of him. So it's about his misadventures trying to deal with it. Again, I loved this, but I only have the second issue, so I don't know what happened before. But I'm definitely going to pick up the next, and it's in a 4-issue limited series, which most of these are limited series. I'm not sure if any of these are going to end up being ongoing, but God knows I'm going to support them. For only having issue 2 of this and kind of coming in cold, I love this. I don't know why I loved it, because not a lot happened. The story, when you say it out loud, doesn't sound that interesting, but I think it had to do with the writer, who I've never heard of the writer before, but I'm really impressed. Again, I'm really impressed with all the quality of these, so as we work our way through, just be prepared for some glowing reviews. This is a horror comic. It's called Croak, and it's a... it's a pretty standard kids go in the woods, get scared, but it's great. I really enjoyed it. It's usually horror comics I've noticed tend to be more about the gore and tend to be about shocking imagery, where this, was able to build suspense and be a little bit more about, suspense and building up tension and things like that, which for a comic is really, really cool. You don't see that a lot. It takes a really good author. Again, really impressed with the quality. I know that I'm hitting that over the head. And for only $1.50, how can you not pick this up? This was one of the comics, though, that I expected not to like. I picked this up later on. The local comic book store nearby has all these alternatives on the press. So I picked it up after I had read several of their other titles. And, excuse me, I'm sorry, I just had dinner. I picked it up after I had read some of their other titles and was just super impressed. So I was going back and getting everything they had on the stands, trying it out. There's issue 2. I believe issue 3 is coming out really soon, so I'm definitely going to have to pick that up. This is another title that I was not interested in. So I had seen this on the newsstand for months, and the title, Wicked and Righteous, there's another really popular comic that I can't remember what it's called, The Wicked and Divine, which I see a lot. That's an indie book. I see a lot of that stands, and this doesn't look like something I want. Also, it's kids, and the tagline basically insinuates about children ruling the world and things like that. I mean, we've seen that. Everyone's read Lord of the Flies and that kind of stuff. But when I picked it up and finally opened it, really great original story. So a few things I've got to compliment about this. I only have issue 1 and issue 3. I could kind of piece together what happened in issue 2, but I'm still out there actively looking for it. But, sort of what happens, parents, there's some kind of disease or whatever, and a lot of the adults die. Something it does that almost nothing does that I think should be seen a lot more in media is, there's the old trope, that comes from like Man in the High Castle and stuff like that, where America gets occupied and split up by different foreign powers. And you actually see a map in the 3rd issue about that, and one of them is the Chinese. And you do not see that enough, especially in entertainment media, the same way you did back in the day with the Soviets and Red Dawn and things like that. The remake of Red Dawn, they actually changed it. It was originally supposed to be the Chinese invade, but then they had to change it to the North Koreans because they were afraid it would adversely affect the production company's business in China. So, it goes out on a limb and it takes that chance, and I highly compliment it. It's great. It's the kids that are left. There's 4 brothers, their uncle, some other stuff. The characters are surprisingly interesting, although I can't really remember their names. They have kind of generic names. But the characters are pretty interesting. And again, super impressed with this. I'm gonna look for the upcoming issues, and I'm still looking for issue 2. This was probably my favorite out of the bunch. And this is the first Alterna comic I picked up. And the reason I picked it up was I went home to visit my parents, and at the local comic book store, they had all 3 issues of this, the first 3 issues of it, and it hadn't really sold well. So I was able to pick up all 3 of them, and when I was standing there and picking up the first one, I thought, hey, if I'm going to take a chance on the first issue, I'm here, they have them, I'll go ahead and I'll buy 2 and 3, and if I don't like it, what am I going to miss out on? So it's going to be like, what, $4.50, right? You can't beat that, right? So I figured I'd take a chance on it. The art is not particularly to my liking, and I describe it as this. So I don't really like the art, but when I put my nostalgia goggles on, I see early 90s to mid 90s Marvel, especially, the X-Men and things like that. So, it does play into it. I got some nostalgia goggles on. Love the story. It's when I describe it out loud, it sounds kind of generic. So, group of mercenaries, post-apocalyptic world. Sea levels have risen. These guys live in Japan, so it's post-apocalyptic Japan, but it's great, and most of all, it's fun. My favorite thing about comics are 1, when they're fun, 2, when they're fun, and 3, when they're fun. And this was definitely that. I mean, it was fun in spades. So after I got this and really, really liked it, I moved on, and I picked up issue 1 and 3 of this Trespasser. I like aliens. I like alien stories. So I picked it up because of the little alien in the corner. I knew there was going to be an alien in it. Really great. So I picked up issue 1, loved it. And I had issue 3, so I had to make the big decision, do I search out for issue 2, or do I just go straight and read issue 3? And I held off on it a little while, and then down here where I live, when I got home from visiting my parents, I was able to find issue 2. So I read 1, 2, and then 3 finally. And again, it's great. I loved it. I had a lot of fun. It did some things that I felt were original. It did some things that I felt were familiar, but it did those familiar things very, very well. And again, most of all, I had fun with it. Number one thing, I had fun with it. This I picked up because it kind of looked funny. So how Alterna works is they separate their comics based on rating. You have, E for everyone down here in the corner. You've got it if it's teen appropriate, and then it's got, M for mature. Where are we at here? Yeah, it's got M for mature down there. So I don't normally read comics that are meant for kids. Usually they aren't very good. But this Mr. Crypt, I liked everything else Alterna was pumping out. It was on the stands. I was able to get my hands on issue 1 and 3. And I really loved it. So this is the one I feel like I got something to prove as far as my taste in comics go. So how about I just open it up here and we have a look in it. The thing that I really liked about it, especially for a comic that's for children, it doesn't seem to talk down. The jokes are funny no matter what. There's a lot of visual gags about him being a skeleton, obviously. And the art is simple and easy to follow. And it's just, overall, it's just really enjoyable. Here he goes in and he gets his disguise. Comes out, he's Mr. Crypt. I really liked the 3rd issue of this. I thought it was great. I'm searching out for the 2nd issue. Of course, the old gag where the dog runs away with the bone. And just a lot of fun. One of my main complaints about modern comics is sometimes modern comics tend to be too serious. You're dealing with a man wearing underwear who flies, and they try to act like it's Shakespeare. And in some ways, taking it seriously helps the story and helps drive it forward. But here, you've got a skeleton that comes back to life, and it's not approaching the existential questions. He can't remember who he was before he died, and he can't remember things like that. That's his friend Baron the Rat, who he makes. It doesn't deal with, and there's a full-page ad for that Scrimshaw that I liked so well. Again, that was really, really fun. Scrimshaw was really, really fun, and I certainly got some serious nostalgia when I read it, because, again, it took me back to the days of early 90s to mid-90s Marvel X books. And I think I don't know this, but I kind of think the artist, that's a little bit what he was going for. So yeah, after I first started buying these, when I put it into YouTube in the search bar, came back, Diversity in Comics had done a video on it, which he's one of the guys who helped inspire this YouTube channel that I'm trying to get going. I really enjoyed his reviews. I'm not going to do anything about Twitter drama and insiders in the industry, but I am going to talk about the comics that I like. And the thing is, I gotta tell everybody out there in YouTube land, you gotta go buy this. You gotta go support this company because it's doing something fun, innovative, and it's cheap. On their website, when you look, they say they're trying to bring comics back to the newsstand, which is how I first started buying comics when I was a kid. And not having any comics on the newsstand, I think, is one of the reasons that comic book sales are declining, and it's gonna die out as a hobby. I mean, when I go into the comic book shop, I'm one of the youngest people in there, which is really sad. So getting them back on the newsstand is going to help kids get in it, and it's a great hobby. I mean, this is how I started reading and how I got into books. I had comic books as a kid, and that really got me into it. So let me know if you read Alterna Comics. Let me know if you have any Alterna Comics you want me to look at, because there are some titles that I haven't picked up yet. Again, I talked about that Mother Russia was the first one I saw, and it didn't really interest me that much, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to go and pick that up. Alterna Comics has me hooked, so I really appreciate what they're doing. And big compliment to whoever evaluates the talent that's coming in. So Diversity in Comics said in his video, and I don't know this for certain, but he said that they have a transparent sort of intake process where if you have a story or something and you think it's good enough, you submit it to them, they decide whether it's good enough, and they'll print it. So whoever's been evaluating the talent on these, again, I'm amazed. I'm so impressed. I hope this company succeeds. I'm out there supporting them. I hope you guys will get out there and support them. Read a couple other comics, and hey, even if you hate it, it's $1.50 of your time and effort. So like, comment, and subscribe. Got some more videos coming your way. I know this has kind of been a long one. I'm going to try to keep them under 10 minutes. And in a couple videos here, I'm going to talk about my gateway to manga, which is Golgo 13, and I'm going to have a contest. So if you would like to enter the contest, stay tuned.